I didn't have to raise my hand. Everyone listened. Great. Some of them up front were telling me to raise my hand to get your attention, so I didn't have to do that. Good morning. I hope your school year is off to a great start. What we're going to do today, it is a training for us to meet the requirements for the Tennessee Drug-Free Workplace, but more importantly, we feel like that you all need the information that is out there for substance abuse, and also to know that there is help available. So the people that we brought in today they're going to provide us with the resources that we need in order to help the coalition decrease the epidemic that we have spreading with addiction in our county. John Mabry is coming to us from Addiction Campuses in Nashville, and he's going to be doing the presentation. But before he comes up, Jeannie Golden, our local resource with the coalition in Lawrence County, is going to actually introduce him to you.
Good morning. I appreciate you guys being out here on an early morning before school officially starts. My name is Jenny Golden, and I'm with the Lawrence County Substance Abuse Coalition. We're a prevention coalition, and our mission is to be a community coalition that creates positive cultural change to reduce substance abuse among youth and adults in Lawrence County. We know that takes time, and it's a cultural change. It takes a very long time. We're not a program, we're a process. And we use the strategic prevention framework process to create that change. We know that policies, practices, and procedures is one of those 8 strategies backed by science that actually helps reduce substance abuse in particular counties. And so we are so proud to have the Tennessee Drug-Free Workplace program coming as a policy for the Lawrence County school system, and we're so proud to have John Mabry from Addiction Campuses coming today to provide this training. It is not like the old boring trainings. You're going to absolutely love it. But before we start, I wanted to pass on a couple of resources. The coalition works with different sectors in the community, including schools, parents, and youth, and we would absolutely love your help with the coalition, or use us as a resource to be able to provide information and decrease barriers and provide support for your students in the schools as well. Just a couple of events that are coming up that I would love for you to add to your calendar. Number 1 is a faith-based forum coming up on Monday, August the 14th. Food starts at 5:30 and the meeting starts from 6 to 8. It's going to be at the old City Administration building off of Waterloo Street. And it's not only for faith-based ministries, but it's also for the open to the public, and we will have some local resources provided for treatment and recovery services, because part of our mission is to increase access to treatment and decrease barriers, and so this is definitely one way to do that. We also have our community coalition meeting coming up, which is on Monday, August the 28th. It's going to be, again, food starting at 5:30. The meeting will promptly start at 6, and it's going to be at the Loretto Civic Center. So please mark your calendars. We'd love for you to come. And we're going to be talking specifically about how personal households can implement a policy on how to safeguard their medicines. So it will apply to absolutely everyone in this county. Without further ado, I would absolutely love to introduce Mr. John Mabry. He is from Addiction Campuses. He has lived this struggle personally, and you'll hear his story. I will not do that introduction as properly as he will. He will tell you the struggles and the strife that he's been through, but what a way to serve and to come out from recovery to help to serve others. And that's absolutely what he is doing. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce John Mabry from Addiction Campuses.
Good morning, good morning. Is that too much light? I think the main focus is to try to be able to give you guys access to the screen behind me as opposed to me. This is going to be much more enjoyable to look at, I'm sure. But John Mabry with Addiction Campuses, such an honor to be here. I've been in some pretty interesting environments in my 39, almost 40 years. And I got to tell you this, the energy in this room, I'm just so fortunate to be a part of this with you guys. And it sounds like you guys are gearing up for an amazing school year that's going to start tomorrow. I love the shirts, find the good and praise. What is it? Find the good and praise it. that's absolutely falls in line with what we do at addiction campuses. And although we're a residential treatment facility, we're based in Nashville, but to give you guys a quick idea, we take about 8,000 calls a month into our call center. We have 5 residential treatment facilities throughout the country, from Massachusetts, Ohio, right outside of Memphis, one in Dallas area, and I'm a graduate of one of our programs. And so before we get started, this isn't going to be your typical drab, kind of boring drug training. It'll get spiced up as we go ahead. But before we get started, what I'd like to do is just ask you kind of where you are, where you stand with substance abuse disorder, with addiction, with mental health issues. Ask you to just take your current view and set it down next to you. Just kind of visually in your mind, take whatever is going on inside of you in regards to this subject, and just kind of imagine yourself setting it down next to you. When we get done with this presentation in the next 45 minutes or so, you could take that same exact view and you can pick that back up and you can keep that a part of you and walk out with that same view. It's absolutely fine. I'm just going to ask you to kind of open your heart, open your mind to maybe a little bit different view of addiction and why it is becoming such an epidemic. It's not actually the drugs themselves. And surprisingly, it's not actually the decisions, it's not solely the decisions of the people who are making, who are struggling with the disease. It's not just that. Those are definitely pieces of it. I'm going to show you a video here in a minute that's going to hopefully open your mind up to a new concept. So right here, before we get started, I'd like to just pause for 15 seconds. Everybody is so busy, and your head is just full of information and full of chaos right now, I'm sure. But just take 15 seconds, close your eyes, and just take a few deep breaths. Something that most people don't do in a day. We're going to get all of it in here in the next 15 seconds. So I'm just going to be quiet. Thank you for that. I'm sure that was a struggle for most people. It was for me until I started doing meditation on a regular basis. It's absolutely helped me stay sober. I am a grateful recovering alcoholic and addict with about a 1.5 year sobriety. I've been doing meditation daily for about close to 190 or 290 days in a row. And as I started doing these meditations and kind of getting out of my own way, opportunities like this started opening up for me. And so I'm just, it's an honor to be here in front of you today. So we're going to go dive in. Let's see what time we got. All right. So addiction campuses. Our mission, I love our mission statement. I love the first few words of our mission statement, heart of compassion. That's what we're about. There are over 14,000 options that people have when it comes to treatment, both inpatient, outpatient, sober living facilities throughout the country. We operate just 5 of those. So people calling in, they're looking for help, they can call anywhere in the country. And I love that our leadership starts off with a heart of compassion. And it's from our CEO down to all of our campuses to the landscapers that we have at our campus in Massachusetts and Texas. It's with the heart of compassion of what we do. That's what drives us. So we had an issue with the clicker. So I have a lovely assistant back here, Vanna. It's going to be my clicker today. Thank you, Vanna. Here's our schedule. We're going to go through Rat Park video. Sounds weird. It is the coolest video I've ever seen on addiction. And we're going to start off with that. Help blow your mind right out of the gates. We're going to go into my story that'll blow your mind a little bit more. And then we're going to go into how bad this problem actually is. You've heard it on the news. You've seen it in the newspapers. I'm going to outline, give you some visuals of the map of Tennessee and county by county increase and the writing of opioid prescriptions by doctors throughout our entire state that's gotten us into the heroin epidemic that we're in. I'm going to give you some history of opioids and heroin that you're not going to believe and that you've probably never heard before. And then we'll just kind of go cycle on through. So let's go ahead and move forward, please. Let's see if this will play. It's about 4 to 5 minutes long. Just click on speakers. That's a little important. I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit. So, I'll go ahead and go into my story a little bit. So in 2000, I was a college student at Baylor University in Texas. I had a very easy upbringing, very simple, not a whole lot of chaos. It was very easy My life was very easy, and everything was provided for me. Everything that I needed was provided, and most everything that I wanted. And so my life got flipped upside down, literally and figuratively. My senior year, at the time, I was a social chair of our fraternity. I was dating the fraternity sweetheart. She was a cheerleader for the university. I had a full ride scholarship that year. I was doing video work for the athletic video staff, and so I got the same scholarship the athletes got. I was riding pretty high senior year. Everything was looking pretty good. In 7 seconds, on March 11, 2000, on I-45 outside of Houston, changed everything. We had a tire blowout in a friend's SUV. No drinking or driving, no drugs or alcohol were involved. Just a freak deal. We rolled 10 times across the interstate, across the median, across the other side of the interstate into a field. And as the car came to a stop, I was conscious the whole time, and I saw my legs just getting crushed, and the sounds of just, unbelievable amounts of information packed into those 7 seconds, and life literally does slow down. And I was waiting for everything to go to black. I told myself, I'm going to die right now. And the car came to a stop. In the movies, what happens when a car rolls 10 times? It blows up, right? So I said, I got to get out. And so I looked down. The car's upside down. I looked down, and my right foot had wrapped around. It was hanging on by some fibers, so I could see the bottom of my right foot as I tried to stand up to run away, and I couldn't. And so I threw myself out of the car and I crawled out. And I turned around, I looked back, and 3 of my friends are still in the car. And I said, "Man, if this thing blows up, and I'm sitting out here not helping, I wouldn't be able to live with that." So I said, "If it blows up, I'm going down with them." So I crawled back in. I got my girlfriend at the time out. My friends in the front, one was unconscious, pinned in. Her head was pretty traumatized. And so her boyfriend up front was tending to her. I got my girlfriend out. We crawled out to safety. Ended up cutting Ashley out of the car. They landed a helicopter on the side of the interstate, shut the interstate down. It doesn't get much more traumatic than this. And they pull her out of the car, and my girlfriend said, "Don't look, don't look." And I turned around and I looked, and her brain was exposed, and that's a visual that's difficult to get out. On top of my own body being disfigured and being exposed to the elements there with children walking around, witnesses walking around, all the medical people. Long story short, I ended up going through 14 surgeries that year, and I opted to have my leg amputated below the knee a year after. So, this is what my leg looked like. They started taking the bandages off. We ended up having to debride. If anybody knows anything about debriding, burn victims and things, you tear the scabs off on a regular basis so that fresh blood can come up and keep it from getting infected. So that was an exhilarating experience, to say the least, to have debriding done to my scabs each and every day. So I had this big hole in the side of my foot. We ended up taking one of my abdominal muscles out, and that's what that is on the bottom picture. That's my abdominal muscle with skin from my hip that they laid over that. So ended up, go ahead and go to the next one. So I'll just show you here. So most people don't realize this is a $25,000 piece of equipment. Technology is great. There's a lot of things that go wrong with it. It's not always fun. Some days or weeks or months you put the leg on, it feels great, and other days or weeks or months you wear it, it just doesn't quite fit right. It's like you put your pants on one morning, and you wore them the day before, or you wore them recently, and you just put your pants on, like, man, these are smaller than they were the other day. And sometimes it's like that with my leg. I'll put it on in the morning, I'm like, man, I shouldn't have eaten all that cake last night. My leg's tight today. Man, I need a bigger leg. So weight management's kind of an issue for amputees, but the point is it's not always as fun as it looks on TV when you see people running, and I've done triathlons and things of that nature. And so I ended up going, after my amputation, I got my diploma 6 weeks later, walked stage with the temporary prosthetic to show everybody I had everything together. I was introduced to painkillers, of course, during that year of surgeries, and that's really where my road to addiction started, was just the painkillers that I needed, the stuff that we get from the doctor that doesn't seem that bad. That started a really, really lonely isolated road. Although on the surface, I tried to make sure, and that's how I grew up, on the surface I tried to make sure everything looked okay and looked good. That's just kind of how we operated as a family. So I ended up going out to San Diego to work on a master's. That kind of isolated me a little bit more, coming from everything that I knew in Texas to Southern California, trying to keep up and trying to fit in as quickly and as best as possible into that culture. Ended up working for a nonprofit organization that gets kids and people with disabilities access to sports, and so that was really great. Got a lot of media attention out of that. And as I'm finishing up this graduate, I got married to my wife that we're barely still married to. God bless her, putting up with me for all these years. But San Diego, I'm wrapping up grad school, and I'm like, man, there's no way I can go help anybody else. I couldn't focus with the painkillers and the amount of alcohol I was drinking, and I couldn't focus in school. So then I'm like, well, now I'm diagnosed with ADHD, so I'm taking Adderall, which is, there's a great place in the market for that. But if you're like me and you're going to take one, then I'm going to take 20. And it is like the devil takes over you for Adderall and Vyvanse and Ritalin. For somebody that is completely entrenched in addiction with that medication, and it just like consumes you. It's like the devil inside of you. At least that was my experience with it. But I'm like, man, there's no way. And then I couldn't sleep, so I'm taking Ambien or taking these sleeping medications that are just like woozy throughout the night. And I wake up in the middle of the kitchen floor, like with a box of cereal in my hand. Don't even remember how I got there. And so, if you look at me from the surface, got the nice tie on, everything looks put together, I was completely in shambles. And I'm like, there's no way I can go help anybody else. So what's the most logical step for one to do when they're in Southern California? Go to Hollywood. Right? When you're an up-and-coming alcoholic and addict, let's go hide away in Hollywood. That'll solve all our problems. And so actually filled in I was a body double for my cousin who was in a TV show called Over There at the time. It just lasted one season on FX, but I ended up filling in for his body double for his character who was going to get his leg blown off. So there's you can go back one or two, go the other way. That's People magazine, and so Ego. Going back to where I was in college, I was kind of I built this facade up that I had everything in control and I had everything together. Well, now here we are again. We're looking good. I got that master's degree hanging up on my home office, and here we go into LA. And doing, I'm bowling at Phil Jackson's house. What does he have, like 10 NBA championships as a coach with the Bulls and the Lakers or whoever he coached for, but bowling at Phil Jackson's house and doing very interesting things with my life that I was just getting further and further into my addiction at the time. And so you can go to the next one. So ended up, here's some of the projects worked on. Superbad, I've got a scene in Superbad with Jonah Hill. So that's Seth Rogen and Michael Cera, those guys from that film. Down here, Willie Nelson, of course. Enough said. He was happy to see me. Very approachable, very laid back. Kaylee Cuoco for Big Bang Theory. Dave Grohl from Foo Fighters is nice guy. This is a film I did called Sublime. And so I found this nice niche in the industry in LA for getting your leg blown up and playing the wounded soldier. So I took what I had or didn't have and put that to good use. And you can go to the next slide. And so I thought I'd reach the top when I got to Playboy Mansion. We get to Playboy Mansion with Adam Sandler. It's kind of like, all right, man. He was happy to see me as well. He was very approachable, very laid back at the time. His red eyes, if you look closely, his eyes might be a little red from the marijuana. But Catherine McPhee up here, she was our next door neighbor. There's 3 people at the birth of my firstborn son. In LA, it was my brother, my mother-in-law, and Catherine. She was kind of Aunt Catherine at the time. She's on the show Scorpion. Gotta plug her. She was from American Idol, right? And so Ashton, these folks, we just had a great night, and everything could not be going better. And a couple of weeks later, got a call that my brother, who was my best friend and my only sibling, didn't show up for work, and he graduated from Georgetown with his MBA. He was top of his class, University of Texas Business School, studied at Oxford, England, had it all together, had no reason to be addicted, but he was struggled with addiction as well. And the thing is, we never got him help because we didn't want anybody to know that our family was struggling. We knew internally in the family that he was struggling. We didn't do anything about it. It was kind of like I liken it to cancer. So addiction is a chronic disease of the brain. Whether you believe it or not, that's fine. You don't have to subscribe to it, but I'm telling you what the facts are, and you can believe it or not. But like cancer or heart disease or diabetes, if you don't address it, what happens? It gets worse, and you can die. Same thing with addiction. If you don't address it, like a tumor, it just gets worse, and you die. So my brother, you can go to the next slide. I went to his house, and went to his bedroom door, and I went to open up his bedroom door, and it was locked. And so I kicked in the door, shards of wood, splinter throughout the room, and I looked past those, and Matt was lying face down on the ground, dead from a cocaine overdose. He had been there for 3 days. There had been a house party in his house that weekend. That he had several roommates, and so there was a big party that went on right around his lifeless body a few nights before. Nobody had any idea. And if you knew my brother, he was larger than life. He had friends that he had made all around the world, literally all around the world. And he had traveled and worked in 7 or 8 different countries and all the major cities in the U.S. by the time he was 33 years old. He was very successful, but he died alone. I mean, it's just so sad to me to think that this is what addiction does. It pulls you away from community, it pulls you away from your families, it pulls you away from everything that you have worked for to obtain, and it isolates you till you're alone. And you have the chance to die if you don't address the addiction. So let's go back to the video. Cool. All right, let's show you Rat Park video.
It's obvious. We all know it. Heroin causes heroin addiction. Here's how it works. If you use heroin for 20 days, by day 21, your body would physically crave the drug ferociously because there are chemical hooks in the drug. That's what addiction means. But there's a catch. Almost everything we think we know about addiction is wrong. If you, for example, break your hip, you'll be taken to a hospital and you'll be given loads of diamorphine for weeks or even months. Diamorphine is heroin. It's in fact much stronger heroin than any addict can get on the street because it's not contaminated by all the stuff drug dealers dilute it with. There are people near you being given loads of deluxe heroin in hospitals right now. So at least some of them should become addicts. But this has been closely studied. It doesn't happen. Your grandmother wasn't turned into a junkie by her hip replacement. Why is that? Our current theory of addiction comes in part from a series of experiments that were carried out earlier in the 20th century. The experiment is simple. You take a rat and put it in a cage with 2 water bottles. One is just water, the other is water laced with heroin or cocaine. Almost every time you run this experiment, the rat will become obsessed with the drugged water and keep coming back for more and more until it kills itself. But in the 1970s, Bruce Alexander, a professor of psychology, noticed something odd about this experiment. The rat is put in the cage all alone. It has nothing to do but take the drugs. What would happen, he wondered, if we tried this differently? So he built Rat Park, which is basically heaven for rats. It's a lush cage where the rats would have coloured balls, tunnels to scamper down, plenty of friends to play with, and they could have loads of sex. Everything a rat about town could want. And they would have the drugged water and the normal water bottles. But here's the fascinating thing. In Rat Park, rats hardly ever use the drugged water. None of them ever use it compulsively. None of them ever overdose. But maybe this is a quirk of rats, right? Well, helpfully, there was a human experiment along the same lines. The Vietnam War. 20% of American troops in Vietnam were using a lot of heroin. People back home were really panicked because they thought there would be hundreds of thousands of junkies on the streets of the United States when the war was over. But a study followed the soldiers home and found something striking. They didn't go to rehab. They didn't even go into withdrawal. 95% of them just stopped after they got home. If you believe the old theory of addiction, that makes no sense. But if you believe Professor Alexander's theory, it makes perfect sense. Because if you're put into a horrific jungle in a foreign country where you don't want to be, and you could be forced to kill or die at any moment, doing heroin is a great way to spend your time. But if you go back to your nice home with your friends and your family, it's the equivalent of being taken out of that first cage and put into a human rat park. It's not the chemicals, it's your cage. We need to think about addiction differently. Human beings have an innate need to bond and connect. When we are happy and healthy, we will bond with the people around us. But when we can't, because we're traumatized, isolated, or beaten down by life, we will bond with something that gives us some sense of relief. It might be endlessly checking a smartphone, it might be pornography, video games, Reddit, gambling, or it might be cocaine. But we will bond with something because that is our human nature. The path out of unhealthy bonds is to form healthy bonds, to be connected to people you want to be present with. Addiction is just one symptom of the crisis of disconnection that's happening all around us. We all feel it. Since the 1950s, the average number of close friends an American has been steadily declining. At the same time, the amount of floor space in their homes has been steadily increasing. To choose floor space over friends, to choose stuff over connection. The war on drugs we've been fighting for almost a century now has made everything worse. Instead of helping people heal and getting their life together, we have cast them out from society. We have made it harder for them to get jobs and become stable. We take benefits and support away from them if we catch them with drugs. We throw them in prison cells, which are literally cages. We put people who are not well in a situation that makes them feel worse and hate them for not recovering. For too long, we've talked only about individual recovery from addiction. But we need now to talk about social recovery because something has gone wrong with us as a group. We have to build a society that looks a lot more like Rat Park and a lot less like those isolated cages. We are going to have to change the unnatural way we live and rediscover each other. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection.
All right, so that kind of took me a few times to really take that information in. But just to reiterate at the end there, the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. So addiction is not the problem. It's the lack of connection is the problem. I believe it's caused by technology is a big one. I think it's a big issue. We all stare at our cell phones. We're all, sitting in the living room last night, and my 9-year-old son goes, "Mom, Dad, why are you both on your phone while we're watching this TV show together?" It's like, oh man, God. We've been training him to know that you're not just going to get the iPad anytime you want, that we do need to connect. And so I may have a noticeable physical disability that kind of was a catalyst for me getting addicted, but anybody in this room has the exact same opportunity to feel disconnected through a traumatic, disabling event, whether it's a divorce, whether it's job loss, a job that you've been working for and you've gone through job loss in the past and you haven't been able to replace that emptiness that you had from that. No matter what the situation is, maybe it's a child struggling at school, maybe it's a child with a learning disability or something that sets them apart. They're getting bullied at school. That can bring up major anxiety for individuals, and so those disabling events in all of our lives can cause any one of us to go and turn toward something to fill that void, and whether it's technology or any number of addictions. So to go ahead and finish up my story, so after my brother died, we had already planned to move to Nashville to raise a family, raise our kids. We didn't want to raise them out in Southern California. My wife's from Chicago. It's too cold. I'm from Texas. It was too hot. We're going to go in the middle. Nashville sounded great. So God led us here, and we've been here 8 years now. And so I said, I want to get in with Dave Ramsey. I started listening to Dave Ramsey. My parents were talking about him all the time. I started listening to him in L.A. So that'd be great to get in with that organization. That would really lift me up in the downward spiral I was continuing to go down. And so at the time it was 7 interviews. It took me 7 interviews over 4.5 months to get in to the Lambeau group there. And the reason he does that is he says he wants to keep the crazy people out. And I was hearing this for the first time as I was a crazy person in the organization. I was like, man, I got through. It's like, suckers. And I had everybody fooled. There were spousal interviews where I had to go out to dinner with my wife and my what would be my supervisor and his wife. I mean, there's all these levels that he puts in to keep crazy out of his organization. He doesn't want to waste time with it. And every time he lets a crazy person in, he finds out what door they came in and he closes that door. And this is no joke. If you look on the website now, it's a 9-interview process. I either got in 1 or 2 doors that he had to close. Not something I'm proud of, but as I'm there and as I'm drinking on the way to work, as I'm drinking at work, literally have vodka sitting in my water bottle at my desk while taking multiple different prescription medications, you know, taking 30 days of a medication in 8 days, 7 or 8 days isn't healthy on top of alcohol. And so I got called into his office one day and he said, look, you obviously need help. I can't help you in the way that you need help, but what I can do is I can let you go. And so instead of providing a resource for me, I got kicked out of the organization and was left with now no health insurance, no job. What do I do? Kind of like the video. And so we would cast these people out who are struggling with addiction because they're making a bad moral decision. And in some cases I was, but I had crossed the line to where it wasn't a decision anymore. I had to take these medications and pills just to survive because I couldn't deal with what was going on inside. And so it was just a natural response. And it's like taking a blanket away from a kid. It's like the blanket is the medication. The blanket is, you know, the place of solitude that child, you know, hangs on to feel comfortable. When you take that alcohol, you take the pills away, it's like, whoa, no, now I'm exposed. What am I going to do? And unless somebody goes and gets help or is offered an opportunity to get help or reaches out for help, then a lot of times they're just going to stay in that cycle. And so, but now I have no job and I have 2 kids at home, and I called my wife and for the first time raised my hand and said, look, I just got fired, here's why, and I need help. So that started my road to recovery, and it's been up and down throughout just the years since 2011, but I'm up to 1.5 years now. And I'm so grateful to be able to be here and stand in front of you sober today. And so thank you for allowing me to share kind of details of my story throughout this presentation. So I'll wrap up here before we go into some of the shocking statistics. I went from the Playboy Mansion to this was a halfway house. It was a trailer that had holes in the floor in the kitchen. I could see down to the ground. There was mold throughout the entire place. It was just not an environment that I was accustomed to, but it was a place that I had earned. And it was a consequence that I needed to have to be able to serve as a catalyst for being able to get where I'm at today. So I'm not saying that if somebody's struggling with addiction, you just let them have whatever they want to have and you don't allow them to have some consequences. And it was like somebody, going back to the cancer analogy, if somebody has cancer, you just say, okay, you know, see you on your way, go deal with it on your own. You know, you've given us a lot of stress and heartache over the years with your cancer, kind of keep coming back, and you've kept relapsing in your cancer, and we spent a lot of money on this, and it's affected your job, and it's affected the whole household. Go deal with it on your own. No, we go, man, what do you need? Let's try another way. Let's try a different option. Same thing with addiction. If something doesn't work, try another option. Don't give up. Don't give up. If I would have given up, I would have been dead. I would have killed myself with the amount of medications that I was taking, on top of the amount of alcohol that I was drinking. When you get to a point when you wake up driving, like, that's a bad sign. That's a bad sign. But the one good thing that I can say is that I have had a desire to keep trying, and that's the only reason why I'm still here, along with the support that I've been able to accrue throughout my time. So next slide, please. So the face of addiction isn't what I always thought it was the people under the bridge that are struggling to just find clothes to put on their back and food in their mouths. But addiction has moved out into the suburbs in record numbers, and I'll show you why here in a minute. So some of the statistics: we have 22.7 million Americans struggling with some kind of dependence on drugs or alcohol. And the next slide shows us that we have about another 8.6% or 18.5% of people struggling with mental health issues. If you add those two together, we have about 25% of us in this room, or 25% of us in our communities and in our country, are struggling in some way with substance use disorder and or mental health issues. So pretty prevalent. In Tennessee is the second most overprescribed opioid state in the country. Opioids are everything from heroin down to your oxycodone, hydrocodone, Loratabs, OxyContin, things of this nature. So, second most overprescribed state in the country, and in 2015, the doctors prescribed us more prescriptions than people that we have living in the state. Isn't that crazy? And then you multiply that times anywhere from, most prescriptions are between 10 to 90 pills. So you imagine, I forget the number, 300.
Say, we have updated information on that. Every Tennessean could have 107 pills for the amount.
Every Tennessean could have 107 pills throughout the course of a year based on the amount of opioids that have been prescribed in our state. So, pretty big issue. Next slide, please. In 2015, we had 1,451 overdose deaths. That's more than guns and car accidents combined. All the regulations we have around guns, all the regulations and about car safety and seatbelts and airbags and all that. Overdoses are killing more people. So it's time that we wake up and see that. Here's just a graphic of drug poisoning deaths in recent years, and we were in a hotbed right here in this part of the country. I mean, right here in our backyard in this region, it is flooded. So, just a nice visual for you to see. So, we're going to fast forward slide by slide from 2007 to 2011. You're going to see opioid prescriptions written by county, and that's per 100 people in the county. So go ahead and go watch the red, just boom, 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 boom. So you go back one more, yeah. Just flooding our state with, yes, of course we have a problem. So here's what happens is, well, let me give you a little bit about heroin. Now let me go back. So here's what happens. People are prescribed a prescription that seems regulated, it seems okay, it's coming from a doctor, it seems, it's natural, okay, yeah, I have an injury or surgery, I need help with that. What happens? Somebody starts taking the pill. They have that disconnection somewhere in their life. They're disconnected in one or more areas of their life, whether it's spiritually, in their spiritual walk, whether it's with their family, whether it's with their job, whether it's just with their own maybe choice of bad decisions over years, and they get those pills, and they're like, If you're like me, when I first put alcohol in my system, it was like, where has this been? Now I can cope in the short term with what's going on in my life. What happens is people are cut off by their doctor or their legal drug dealer, as I call them, and they're cut off by their doctor from their prescriptions, and now they're left with crud. Now I got to deal with myself. I don't have time. I got to keep up. I got family responsibilities. I got work responsibilities. I can't go and actually go get counseling and go get help. So I'm starting to go through withdrawal effects from the opioids that I've taken from the doctor. I've taken so many now that when I stop taking them, I get sick and I start throwing up and I start feeling terrible. And so I'm going to turn to the next logical option, was to go and get them from the street. That's what Prince did. That's how Prince died. He went to the street to go get Percocets. He's getting Percocets that he thinks are pharmaceutical, like he's taken from the pharmacy, but they're laced with deadly fillers like fentanyl, which can be 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. I'll repeat that. Fentanyl is a filler that are being used in opioid pills on the streets that's 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. And when somebody takes a pill, say they're used to taking 20 in a day, and they take 20 from the street, and it's laced with these fillers, it shuts their system down. Heart stops and they die. Now, you may overdose and may live, or you may not overdose, but a lot of times the next thing that happens in the series is you run out of money. Pills would get expensive. And so people turn to the next logical option, which is heroin. Heroin's cheap, it's really accessible, they don't have to go to the doctor to get it, it's not regulated by the state or the government, and so that's how people are getting hooked on heroin. Not by choice. Nobody raises their hand and go, I want to graduate high school and I want to go to college and then I want to start using heroin. I want to overdose and have my kids find me with a needle in my arm in the living room. Yet that's what we're seeing more and more of. And it starts with these opioid prescriptions that have been flooded by the slides that I just showed you into not just our state but other states around the country. So history of heroin, filthy history. And so I point this out to say we're not just this isn't just some fly-by-night addiction that kids are doing these days. This is massive, massive problem that goes back to World War II when Bayer Pharmaceuticals, they had a German scientist, they didn't invent the drug, but as one of their scientists, they had these testers that kept coming back time and time again saying, they said, how do you feel after taking heroin? How do you feel? And they came back time and time again saying, I feel heroic. I feel strong and heroic. And so this German scientist said, let's market this thing and call it heroin. It's literally spelled hero-in. You have a hero inside of you when you take this drug. Heck yeah, sign me up. I want to be a hero. I want to be a superhero. So it's a genius marketing scheme that it came up from the beginning. And you know where the testers came from? They were Jewish slave laborers that were purchased from Auschwitz concentration camp in Nazi Germany in World War II for the sole purpose of using them as testers for this and other drugs. And Bayer Pharmaceuticals has publicly admitted to doing this. It's not just hearsay. So this drug has a filthy, demonic history to it that we're up against. So, yeah, 1990s to 2000s, doctors were handing pills out like crazy because they were getting higher patient satisfaction reviews. Who doesn't want to, once these patient satisfaction reviews became more and more prevalent, doctors were like, well, I want higher reviews. I'm going to hand out more candy to the kids that are, the people that are coming to me for the candy. Yes, I'll hand them out. And they're going to go tell their friends, hey, go to this doctor. This doctor's really hooking me up. He's really helping me out. And then they were rewarded with repeat customers. To their defense, we didn't know at the time that it was going to have such bad fallout with addiction that we have today. So they are starting to taper back, and the numbers show that Tennessee is being prescribed less prescriptions in 2015 and 16. But now here's the problem, is you already have the people hooked on the drugs. There's less that they're able to have access to through pharmacies, which are regulated. So you have more people going outside to the streets for those pills that I was talking about, and more people going to heroin because they can't go to their doctors frequently. So it's great that we're making progress with the doctors bringing them down, but now we have more overdoses coming out because all these people are left with crud. Now they're scrambling, where do I go? I'm just going to go to get them from somebody off the street. Here's what the withdrawal effects, let's play this video. This is, I think, of great importance for people to understand why people don't stop. Here's one of the biggest reasons why people don't stop using heroin, is because they get so sick that it's like they feel like they're dying in their own skin, and they don't want to feel that way anymore. And so they just say, just give me another hit. Wake up in the morning, let me find $10 to get enough to get one hit. Let me smoke that, snort it, or shoot it in my arm, just so I can get up to a level where, okay, I can cope for the day. And I don't feel like I'm actually dying while alive. So let's play this for you. Give me a second, folks. All right, so we'll just pass on that. So, yeah, so basically, guy describes the agony, the pure agony that people go through when going through withdrawals from opiates. So it needs to be medically regulated a lot of times to keep somebody from feeling so bad. And that's where treatment comes in, or detox. Somebody comes to the hospital that needs to be detoxed. The reason is if their bodily functions they're not functioning correctly. They're sweating like crazy. Their brain is so confused because it's used to having a certain drug in their system, and when you remove that, the body just goes insane. And so that's why people just kind of continue to use. Again, addiction is a disease of the brain. Whether you believe it or not, that's fine. You don't have to subscribe to it, but that's the truth. I didn't believe it. I always just thought it was like my brother making bad mistakes. I'm like, dude, stop. Like, just stop. Same thing as like telling somebody with diabetes, don't have diabetes anymore. Like, those cancer cells that are growing in your body, stop. Those cancer cells, just stop growing those. They're hurting you. They're hurting your family, and it's hurting your job performance. You just need to stop doing that. And it's a lot more than that. So next slide, please. American Society of Addiction Medicine defines addiction like this. Addiction is a primary chronic disease of brain reward, motivation, memory, and related circuitry. All the brain systems that are driven or motivated by survival, even such basic instincts as hunger and thirst, can be overtaken by the disease, compelling the addict to prioritize using drugs and alcohol over anything else. While each drug produces different physical effects, all abused substances share one thing in common: that repeated use can alter the way the brain looks. And that's what, at the beginning people have a choice. I had the choice whether to go get a prescription refilled or to go to the doctor and get another prescription, because I knew, I was like, man, I need some more of this stuff. I need some more of this stuff. Give me some more. I absolutely had that choice. I made those choices. But there's a certain point when you kind of hit a tipping point, and then it becomes less of a choice and more of a need to be able to, because our brain is rewired. And so let's go to the next one. Substance use disorder. So this is the new term is substance use disorder. Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, or DSM-5, defines it as it no longer uses the term substance abuse and substance dependence. Rather, it refers to substance use disorders, which are defined as mild, moderate, or severe, to indicate the level of severity, which is determined by the number of diagnostic criteria met by an individual. And the criteria, there's like 9 different criteria, and if you have 2 of them, then you can be considered having substance use disorder. I have all 11. I think I had it when I looked at the list a while back. So I definitely fall into that category. So substance use disorders occur when the recurrent use of alcohol and/or drugs causes clinically and functionally significant impairments such as health problems, disability, and failure to meet major responsibilities at work, school, and home. According to the DSM-5, a diagnosis of substance use disorder is based on evidence of impaired control, social impairment, risky use, and pharmacological criteria. So some risk factors that make somebody more susceptible to addiction than somebody else would be, the number one factor is genes. Can be up to 60% of a person's chances of becoming addicted fall into family history of addiction. It's passed down through the genes. Physical accident or surgery, abuse, neglect, or other traumatic experiences in childhood. I'd like to stop here. I spent probably $100,000 and several years in and out of some treatment centers, counseling, therapy sessions, medications, all this stuff I was working on. And I finally said, I have trauma. Maybe I should go see a trauma therapist instead of a trauma psychiatrist and psychologist, as opposed to just a general psychiatrist and psychologist. And so I have this novel idea of going to a professional that deals specifically with what I struggle with, is PTSD and trauma. I had a phone consultation with this therapist in Franklin. And she goes, in 10 minutes of phone call, she stops me and goes, look, I don't care about your brother dying. Like, I don't care. And I don't really care about your friend dying, and I don't care about your leg being cut off. What I care about is what happened to you as a child. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, are you like psychic or something? Like, I was like, do you know something I don't know? Because nothing happened. Like I said, when we started the talk off, I had an easy upbringing. And both my parents, my grandparents are also married, and I mean, just no chaos in the house really. And she goes, something happened early on. What was it? Man, so I racked my brain and said, well, I had some ear surgeries as a kid, but like that wasn't a big deal. She was like, boom. There's where your problem started. Let's go unpack that. I was like, man, she goes, when you come in, we're going to start with that. So over a couple sessions, I'm doing like cartoon drawings with crayons, like weird stuff. I'm like, I'll try anything. Like I said, don't give up. There's a different approach for every single person. I was willing to try anything. And so I still have pictures of these things that I drew of like me in the hospital bed. And what I started seeing is I was being separated from my safety from my parents as a child, time and time again. I had 6 ear surgeries as a kid. Ended up having transplanted eardrum and the 3 bones in this ear, prosthetic bones. And I started realizing that was extremely traumatic for me. The fear, anxiety, the worry, I'm defective. I'm different than other people. And I always felt this itching underneath my skin that I could never scratch. And it started with that. And I never even thought about it. But how I handled it was, she goes, how do you think you handled that? What ended up coming out? And I was like, well, I was the funny guy. I was like the comedian. And to give you an idea of how bad I overcompensated for feeling defective and not good enough as a child, is in high school I wanted to get class clown. That was like my sole goal. I was like, if I graduate, that's secondary. As long as I get class clown, I'm pretty excited. And so senior year at prom, I was awarded class clown, most outgoing, most school spirited, and best personality. When I told this to the therapist, she goes, do you think that had any connection with how you felt as a child and that you were overcompensating for that? I was like, holy crap, she's right. So I point that out for you to be aware of, that if you or somebody that you know has had some kind of traumatic experience as a child, it could be a separation of a parent, anything along those lines. Not everybody's the same, and not everybody's affected the same way in traumatic experiences as somebody else might be, but in my case, it absolutely goes back to my childhood. And no matter how much I impacted about my car accident or my brother dying, I was never really going to get to the root cause, which is I felt defective, and I felt wrong, and I felt different, and I felt scared from early on. So until I really dealt with that, I wasn't really able to make the progress that I needed to make. So something to consider. Mental disorders, There's also a risk factor, people with bipolar, anxiety, depression, people who started using drugs early in life, high-pressure jobs, such as the jobs that you guys have dealing with our youth, and alternative lifestyle, lesbian, gay, bisexual lifestyles, things along those lines. Real quickly, some common substances abused, alcohol, marijuana. Point this out, marijuana. So there's more and more edibles that are coming out. We all know, most people have heard of, like brownies that are laced with marijuana. They're getting more and more sophisticated, so children or kids could get access to things. In California, when I had a prescription for marijuana that I was very easily able to obtain, was able to walk into a dispensary at any given time, day or night, walk into vending machines to where they had like Reese's peanut butter cups and all kinds of stuff laced with THC, even like breath strips, like a Listerine breath strip that you put on your tongue. I would take packs of those. Don't tell my wife, she doesn't know this. When I would travel, I would take these little strips with me, and nobody had any idea, other than the bloodshot eyes that I was walking around with. Benzos are your benzodiazepines, another big one with that's Xanax, Valium, Klonopin, Ativan. These are great medications if used properly for somebody that needs them, but they're easily abused as well. And when you put alcohol on top of the benzos, people go blackout. If somebody's nodding off in the middle of a conversation or kind of nodding off while driving, that could be something that could be in their system. Amphetamines are your Adderall, Ritalin, Vyvanse. Those are, raise you up. If you see people with weight loss, it decreases your appetite. So if you see somebody drop weight quickly and they're like moving around all the time, and if you're like me, I started like 9 projects in any given day and never finished one of them. I was bouncing around, acting like I was doing something with my life, and I was really just living in chaos. Somebody that's really hyper-focused on computer or hyper-focused on projects, and they tune everything else out. I mean, I would eat maybe 400 calories in a day, and I wouldn't sleep for 2 or 3 days at a time. The amount of Vyvanse and Adderall that I was taking, and the sleeping pills are commonly abused as well. Cycle of addiction is somebody has low self-esteem, life becomes unmanageable in some way, they have low self-esteem and guilt, frustration, anxiety. And go to the next one. There's a need to act out. Discomfort becomes intolerable. They start using substances to find relief. Next slide, please. Creates justification from the problem, but the problem's still there. Just mask it. And when the effects wear off of the substances, you realize, oh crud, I'm still stuck where I was. And I'm in more pain because I've created some consequences in my life. Now I'm behind on work. Now I'm, fill in the blank. And cycle repeats itself until it can kind of end in jail, recovery, or treatment, or death. And not necessarily physical death, but spiritual or emotional death, where you're walking around just numb and not being able to enjoy anything in life. So, addiction campuses. What we'd like to do is just know that we're a resource available for you. We take, again, over 8,000 phone calls a day, and we place people in treatment centers all across the country, not just our own. We're a one-stop shop. If you're not sure where to go, do you or somebody you know need inpatient treatment, where you just kind of go in for 3 or 4 hours a day, where you keep your job or maintain schoolwork, and go to an outpatient facility. It's just where you go several times a week. For several hours a day, you get some group support, some therapy, and it doesn't always mean somebody needs help or treatment. Doesn't mean they always need to go away to a 30-day treatment center, but that's kind of a starting point. Get some counseling, some help can help guide you toward, well, maybe I need a little bit more, maybe I do need inpatient treatment. But we're a one-stop shop for any and all those questions. So you're going to receive an email. You should receive an email tomorrow from Shannon, right? And it's going to have my contact info right here before we close, and ask any questions. If anybody has any questions, Richard Darden, can you please stand up for me? Richard's our business development rep from this area. He is a wealth of knowledge, and he goes to people's houses and helps with. Do you help with interventions? So he helps facilitate interventions. If you're not sure what to do, Richard is on the road all the time here in Middle Tennessee, and he will go actually pluck somebody out and help. We will help get them to treatment, help get them to the airport if need be, to save a life and to save a family from falling apart. And so Richard's contact info, he's the best point of contact for following up if you have some questions or want to consider you or a family member or a friend that might need some help. Richard Darden's contact info will be on that email tomorrow, as well as mine. So
I'll be here after convocation.
So yes, thank you, Richard. I've got to run to the next. Actually, no, we've got another hour for the supervisors. So supervisors are going to stick around for the next hour. Let's take about a 5-minute break. What's the next slide? Make sure I'm not missing anything. Let's just pass on that. We're out of time. Does anybody have any questions off the top of their head that you might want to ask at this point? Again, I want to thank you for your time and attention. I know that's the greatest resource that you have is your time, and I appreciate your attention during this hour. Supervisor, let's take a 5-minute break. Again, supervisors, maybe take a bathroom break, grab water.
Thank you, John. If any of you did not sign, please make sure before you leave that you sign. The sign-up sheets are on the